Yeah, so to understand nonlinear systems and how we really deal with them, I'll just spend maybe about 50 minutes of today's class just discussing it with you guys, and what it really means to linearize a nonlinear system and how we go about it, so that we can jump into these questions and maybe do them in a straightforward way, right? All right. So the first thing you need to understand is everything that we've been discussing under control systems, like all the control systems we've been looking at, and the techniques that we use to control them apply only for linear. Oops, give me a sec. Apply for linear time system. Linear. They're actually called LTI systems, right? So how we usually think of them is as linear time invariant systems, right? So that's kind of the technical term, right? So there's a bunch of assumptions here, right? So one of the biggest assumptions that we made were that all the state space models that we looked at were linear systems, right? So if you go back and look at all the examples we discussed and look at all the slides that Liang discussed, right? All the system equations were linear equations, right? So what I mean by linear equations is that there are no nonlinear terms like x squared or sine x or anything like that, right? So all the functions that we dealt with are linear. Let me show you some examples. So if we looked at the very first example we discussed, right? We discussed, I believe, the spring damper system, right? So if you look at all these equations, there are no nonlinear terms in them, right? So if you look at this matrix, right? The reason we can write this in a state space model without by just taking out the states out of this and writing it in a matrix form is because there are no nonlinear terms, right? So we don't see any nonlinear terms of x here at all, right? So we don't see any sine x's or cos x's or x squared or x cubed or e to the power x or any of those kind of nonlinear stuff, right? So everything that we discussed so far only fall into linear systems, right? So even this inverted pendulum example and every tutorial that we've discussed so far, if you go back to them, you can see that they were all linear, right? Which allowed us to do all sorts of things, like we in a very straightforward way did pole placement and all sorts of stuff, right? But in the real world, if you model actual mechanisms, in most cases they are extremely nonlinear, right? So none of the approaches that we took to solving these problems really apply in the real world, because in most cases, if you actually sit down and try and model a real world scenario as accurately as possible mathematically, you will end up with a lot of nonlinearities, right? So there are different ways of dealing with nonlinear systems, right? There's an entire field called nonlinear control, right? But one of the most basic and straightforward ways to deal with a nonlinear system, right? So a nonlinear system is to approximate it as a linear system, right? So what we do is we convert it and we approximate it to sort of a linear system. Once we do that, all the techniques that we use so far applies again, right? Because what we do is we've just converted the nonlinear system and we approximated it to sort of a linear system. So then everything that you learned in the last 3 classes apply, right? Now, this approximation is, as the name suggests, an approximation, right? So it's not 100% accurate, but surprisingly, it works pretty well, right? So in most cases, you sort of approximate a nonlinear system with a linear system, and it performs surprisingly well, right? But it all depends on how intelligently you sort of approximate the system, right? So let's look at one of the ways of approximating a nonlinear system to a linear system, right? Now, to do this, you need to understand intuitively. I'm not going to go into super great detail into this, but one important tool that can really help us is what we call the Taylor series, right? So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I think it's useful to understand the Taylor series because it will help you kind of understand why the linearization process that you just learned is the way it is, right? So let's just look at the Taylor series on Wiki, right? Not Taylor Swift, but that's the first thing that pops up in Google. So if I type in the Taylor series Wiki, right, I think it gives you a pretty good understanding of the Taylor series, right? So what you do in the Taylor series is, what the Taylor series essentially says is that you can basically decompose any function, right, into this series called the Taylor series, right? So it's an infinite series. So any function that you can think of, right? Say, I don't know, like, I don't know, fx equals x squared plus 5x plus 6 or something like that. This can be written as an infinite series, right? So if you look at how the series is formed, this is what the series is, right? So any series, any function can be written as this infinitely long series of these terms, right? Now the great thing here, if you look at it, is that what you're really doing is you're taking the function and you're decomposing it into different polynomials of different degrees, right? So you start off here with a degree of 1, and here you can see that the degree increases to 2 and 3 and so on, and it keeps on increasing to infinity, right? Now what this means is each of these terms, you can think of them as an approximation of the total function, right? So the what the Taylor series does is it says a function fx can be equal to this entire series, right? And each of these terms, the more terms you add in, the better your approximation of the function is, right? So for example, if we forgot about the squared and cubed and other terms and just looked at these first two terms, you can see that these two terms are linear terms, right? So our approach to linearizing a nonlinear function is going to be to write out the Taylor series and ignore these other higher order terms and only look at the first two terms of the Taylor series, right? So let me just visually, there's a nice little animation here that will help you understand visually what this means. Right, let's look at this, right? So this black line is the actual function, right? And each of the terms of the Taylor series is what's represented by these different colors, right? So if you look at n equals 1, which will come in a bit here, right? You can see that there is a linear approximation, and the more terms you add in your series, the closer it becomes to this actual nonlinear function, right? So the more terms you keep adding into that series, the closer it becomes to the actual function, right? So obviously it's better when you have more and more terms because it gets closer and closer to the actual function, right? So each of these terms is what you saw represented in that animation, right? So the more terms you add into it, it will approximate the function better and better, right? Because essentially what these terms are is the function, right? So what the Taylor series says is any function can be written as a bunch of these terms added up, right? But if you want the function to be perfectly represented, you'll need all these terms up to infinity. But if you take some of these terms, it will just be an approximation of that function, right? So what we are interested in are just the first two terms, because what that does is it gives us sort of a linearized version approximation of that function, right? And we are going to ignore these other terms. Another important thing you need to understand here is that there is this value called a here, right, which is a constant. This value a is the point around which we want to kind of approximate the function, right? So you can't approximate it everywhere, obviously. So for example, in this case, you can see here it's kind of approximated around this 0, 0 point, right? Which is why everything is kind of approximated around that point, right? So even the linear version, when you saw n equals 1, was around this 0 point, right? And you can see around that 0 point, the approximation is pretty good, right? It's just when you keep going further and further apart, that's when they kind of diverge. So even the linear version where n equals 1, you saw that around this area, it's a pretty good approximation, right? So this point around which you want to approximate is super important, right? Because that's around which the Taylor series is kind of built around, right? So you can see another example here, right? Take a sine curve. You can see that, okay, this is not an animation. Let's take this. So, okay, so there's an exponential function. You can see this red line is the approximation, right? So the more terms we add in, the closer it becomes to the actual approximation. But this is what the linear approximation looks like. When n equals 1, you can see it again. So when n equals 1, there we go. This is a linear approximation, right? Again, you can see that the linear approximation is pretty accurate around a given point, right? And that given point is this a value in the Taylor series, right? So you can see here that derivatives become important. So f dash is the first derivative and so on, right? So two things I want you guys to kind of take away from this Taylor series discussion is, one thing, derivatives are super important when we are kind of doing a Taylor expansion. Second is this a value, right? The value around which you want to approximate the function. Now you can read more about this, right? And there's plenty of videos online about the Taylor series as well, right? But I just wanted to give you guys sort of an intuitive understanding about some of the things that you'll learn in when you're linearizing an entire system, right? So two things I want you to take away from this. One is we need to find a point around which we want to linearize it, right? And second, the derivatives of the function play a huge role in it, right? Because each derivative term here gives you sort of an understanding of the rate of change of the function, right? But we are only concerned about these first two terms, right? Okay, so I hope you guys have like an intuitive understanding of how to kind of linearize a function. So essentially what we do is we just look at the first two terms of the Taylor series. Now, how does this apply to a system of equations, right? So here, this is a Taylor series of one single function. But when we are dealing with a system of functions, right, like in a state space model where we have multiple equations, right, we need to think a bit more, things get a bit more complicated, right? Because now our derivatives are not as clean as just a single derivative like this. We have to look at partial derivatives because we have multiple states, right? Multiple functions in our state space model, right? Okay, so let me take up an example of how we go about linearizing it. So I'll just take the same example that Liang discussed, right? And I'll walk through it once again so it's fresh in our minds before we start the tutorial, right? Right, so if we take non-linear system. By the way, we're going to discuss non-linear discrete time systems, right? So remember when we have k plus 1 and k and these like time steps, we're dealing with discrete time systems because those are what we generally come across in computers and when we are trying to do robotics, because we generally deal with discrete packets of data rather than continuously changing data, right? So let's look at these two functions, right? So here we have two nonlinear equations, right? So generally what we do is if we have a set of equations like this, we try to put it into matrix form so we can write the state space model out. But you can see since there are nonlinearities in the system, it's really hard for us to write it in a normal state space, linear state space representation, right? So what we'll have to do is we'll have to take these two equations and linearize them and write it in a way where we can sort of write it in a state space model, right? So our goal is we have a bunch of nonlinear systems, right? Not a bunch of nonlinear systems, we have a nonlinear system which implies a bunch of equations, right? So we have, right, both of which are nonlinear, and we want to convert it into this form, right? Right, which is a nice linear state space model, right? Cool. So we have these two nonlinear systems, nonlinear functions, right? Yeah, so we kind of write it like this. Actually, sorry, I made a mistake here. Right, so our functions look like this. We have xk plus 1, right, which is a function, a nonlinear function, right, of xk and uk, right? So if it's a linear function, we can write it like this in our state space model, right? Because you can see here it's a nice linear relationship. A into xk plus b into uk. There are no squares, no cubes, no signs, none of that, right? So this is a nice linear. So for example, this function x k plus 1 f is also a function of xk and uk, right? But it's nice and linear, right? Here we can't, we are going to look at a non-linear function. In this case f is linear, in this case f is non-linear, so we can't really write it in this way, right? So we just leave it like this. Okay, so our plan now is to somehow convert it into this form, right? So we need to figure out what the A's and B's and C's are if we try and sort of linearize this nonlinear function. So to help us do this, we're going to use the Taylor series expansion to kind of help us do this. Now, I told you there are two important things here, right? When we looked at the Taylor series, number one is the point around which we want to linearize. Right? So essentially you can pick any point, right? But what we're going to do is we are going to sort of pick we are going to pick the point in an intelligent way, because we know that when we do a linear approximation of this function, it's going to be the most accurate around the point that we pick, right? So what we do is we pick the equilibrium points of our system. What is an equilibrium? The equilibrium is sort of the natural tendency of the function, like where it likes to rest, right? So we make the assumption that the function will generally, typically kind of behave around its equilibrium point, which is a reasonable assumption to make, because if you think about it, any system, right? Take for example a pendulum or whatever, right? The pendulum swings around the equilibrium point, right? Around where it likes to naturally kind of stay, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to pick the points around which we want to linearize to be the equilibrium points of our system, right? Because our system likes to be around that point generally, right? So because we know that the linearized system will behave, the approximation will behave the best around this point that we pick, right? So if we pick this point in an intelligent way, in this case, if we pick the point to be the equilibrium points of a dynamic system, we'll get a better approximation closer to this equilibrium point. But the further this will go away from the equilibrium point, the lesser our approximation will be good, right? So the further it goes away from this equilibrium point, the worse our approximation gets. But we're going to make the assumption that this will generally operate, right, closer to our approximation. Okay, so the question now is these points. How do we calculate these points, right? So how do we calculate an equilibrium, right? So intuitively, an equilibrium is basically where our states don't change, right? That is what an equilibrium means, right? So if we take x k plus 1 minus xk equals 0, right, we can sort of calculate our equilibriums. Okay, so what does this mean? The next step minus the previous step is going to be equal to 0, which means the states haven't changed, right? this should be a capital X, K, right? So let's actually do an example, and this will be a bit more clearer, right? So we have two nonlinear functions, right? Let's see if there's an easy example. Okay, let's just go ahead with this one, right? Let me write it out here first. You guys can follow along as well, right? So imagine you modeled the system, and these were the two functions that you got for your how your states change, right? So you have x1 k plus 1 1/4 x1 k squared plus x1 k minus 2 u1 k, and we have x2 k plus 1 1/4 x2 k squared plus x1 k minus 2 u2 k. Okay. Alright, so here you can see that there are inputs as well. Again, for us to calculate the equilibrium points, we also need to know for which inputs do we want to calculate the equilibrium points, right? Because again, as I mentioned before, right, if our inputs are generally really high, right, let's say around this point in our pendulum example or whatever, the equilibrium could be somewhere like here, right? But if our input forces are really small, the equilibrium could be here. So what these u1 and u2 values sort of determine what our equilibrium points are going to be. So whenever you want to linearize, you need to be aware of what your inputs kind of look like as well, right? So in this case, you've been given that you want to find the equilibrium points for u1 equals 0.5 and u2 equals 1, right? So for under these conditions, what are the equilibrium points around which we are going to sort of linearize this system, right? So our goal is to take these two equations, and right now they are just functions. Right now, right, the state vector x, which is essentially x1 k plus 1 and x2 k plus 1, is equal to some sort of function of x, k, and u, k, right? So you can see that our state vector is x1 and x2, right? This should be simple x1. So our state vector x is x1 and x2, right? And we can see that xk plus 1 is some sort of nonlinear function of xk and uk, right? And our goal is to try and convert this into our into the form that we've come to kind of play around with in control so far, which is a nice linear state space model, right? So we are trying to convert this nonlinear function into this nice linear function, right? So the first step you need to do is find the points around which you want to linearize. Right? In other words, we are going to pick the equilibrium points, right? Because of all the reasons I mentioned before, right? Because they generally like to behave around those equilibrium points. Okay, so let's calculate the equilibrium points. So as I mentioned before, the way you calculate the equilibrium points is you say that the previous step and the next step, the change in the states is 0, right? So we take this first equation, and how do we formulate this? You just take x1k to this side, right? So if you take x1k plus 1 minus x1k, what you get is 1/4 x1k squared minus 2 u1k equals 0, right? So all I did was, you can think of it as subtracting minus x1k here, or taking this x1k this side, right? And then you get this equation, and as I mentioned before, we are looking under the condition where our input is equal to 0.5, right? So if I solve this equation, you can see that I get x1 k squared, and then this will be 1, and then if I multiply the whole thing by 4, I'll get 4 here equals 0, and then I get x1k is equal to, so I'm going to put a x1k bar here, right? So this is our equilibrium point, equals plus minus 2. So for our states not like the point at which our states are not changing are at when our states are plus 2 or minus 2, right? So these are our first two equilibrium points. Okay, so this was for x1k plus 1. We need to do the same for x2k plus 1, right? So if I do the same for this, x2k plus 1 minus x2k equals 0. Again, there is no x2k here for me to take this way, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a minus x2k here and then a minus x2k here. So what happens then is you get 1/4 x2k squared plus x1k minus 2 u2k minus x2k equals 0, right? So if I sort of simplify this, u2k is equal to 1, so this will be equal to 1. I will get, if I multiply this whole thing by 4, I should get x2 k squared plus 4x1k minus 8 minus 8 minus 4 x2 k equals 0. Now you can instantly see here that there is a x1k term, right? So for us to calculate the x2k equilibriums, we need x1k values. So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute these two equilibrium points, right? So what essentially happens then is the solutions for x2k actually branches out depending on what x1k value you pick, right? So if I pick the plus 2 value, I get a separate branch. If I pick the minus 2 value, I'll get a separate branch, right? So if I pick plus 2, what I do is I substitute plus 2 for x1k, right? Which essentially means I'll have a plus 8 here, minus this 8 will be 0. So if I pick plus 2, the equation I get is x2 x squared plus 8 minus 8 is 0 minus 4x2k equals 0, right? And if I solve this, I take x2k out, then I'll get x2k in here minus 4 equals 0. My solutions are going to be x2k. My first equilibrium point is going to be 0. My second equilibrium point is going to be 4. If I pick minus 2, and then I'll have to substitute minus 2 here, and then I'll get minus 8 is 16. What I'll get is x2k squared minus 16 minus 4x2k, right? And if I solve this similarly, right, I'm just not going to spend time doing that because the answer is already here in your slides. I should get 2 more answers for x2 bar, which is 2 plus 2 root 5. 2 plus 2 root 5 or 2 minus 2 root 5. So these are all the equilibrium points that we have, right? So you can see here that what we essentially have are how many equilibrium points? We have, just to summarize, our system has many equilibrium points, right? And let's now write them out. Now that we solved all the equilibrium points, these are the pairs of equilibrium points that we can have. We can have x1 k equals plus 2 along with x2 k equals 0, or x1 k plus 2 and x2 bar equals 4, right? So I've covered this or I can have x1 k minus 2 and x2 k 2 plus 2 root 5, or I can have x1 k minus 2 and x2 k, this should all be bar because this is the equilibrium points, equals 2 minus 2 root minus 2 root 5, right? So we actually have 1 2 3 4, we have 4 equilibrium points, right? So cool, we can linearize our system around any of these sets of points, right? So think of it again, if you think about our function, right? So right here, if you looked at this, this is a nice single function, right? And around which we've picked a point and we've sort of linearized the system around. Here we have two functions, right? We have a system of functions, which is why we use matrices here, right? And we have a bunch of, actually 4 different points around which we can kind of think about linearizing this system, right? So now that we have these points, next question is, how do we actually use them to linearize the system? So the next thing I told you guys to remember is that derivatives of your function play a huge role, right? So in the case of a bunch of equations like this, here we have 2 equations, we can't just take simple sort of derivatives. We have to take partial derivatives because we have 2 different variables here that can change, right? So in actuality, what we have to do is we take partial derivatives, and since this is a sort of a system of equations, we have to look at something called a Jacobian matrix, right? Which takes into account all these different ways you can take derivatives against all these different variables that exist here, right? So this final linearized system, which our goal is to get this, right? Our goal is to get this, right? Our final linearized system uses the Taylor series. I'm not going to go in and prove it, but it uses the Taylor series. And if you guys want, you can probably see the connection as well, in a way that this A matrix is actually equal to these set of partial derivatives. If I take my first function and take it and differentiate it with respect to x1, take my second function, differentiate it with respect to x2. Sorry, my bad. I take my first function again and differentiate it with respect to x2. I take my second function, differentiate it with respect to x1. Take my second function, differentiate it with respect to x2. I take these partial derivatives, and then once I differentiate these values, I will have to substitute my x1 bar values and x2 bar values that I pick. So we have 4 options to do that. So you can pick any of these 4 options, or you can pick all of these 4 options, right? But you can see that once you get this matrix, right, of partial derivatives, that is what will represent our linearized system's A matrix, right? So this matrix mathematically is known as a Jacobian matrix, right? Similarly, our B matrix, so the whole list is out here, right? Our B matrix will be basically DABA F1 by DABA U1, DABA F2 by, sorry, I always do that. This should be F1 by DABA U2. This will be DABA F2 by DABA U1. F2 by DABA U2, right? So another way of sort of writing this in a short way is that we are taking, this is the way we write the whole Jacobian, right? So this whole matrix just can be represented like this, DABA F by DABA U, again at the equilibrium points, right? So the equilibrium points for U were those values that we initially decided U should be, right? These values, right? So just to summarize again, this can be written as just DABA F by DABA X, right? That represents this whole matrix. And then our C matrix is going to be DABA G by DABA X, right? And then our D matrix is going to be DABA G by DABA U, right? So G is the output function. So assuming our output function is nonlinear as well, you can just differentiate it with respect to U and X, and that will give us the C and D matrices, right? So this slide kind of summarizes what those Jacobian matrices are, right? So if we go down our example, right, let's try and find the A and B matrices of our example, right? So what is our A matrix in this example? So the first step was to find the equilibrium points. Second step is find the Jacobians, right? So what is our A matrix? DABA F by DABA X, which essentially means you take our first function, differentiate it by x1. So if I differentiate this function by with respect to x1, what do I get? So if I take this first function and differentiate it with respect to x1, right, 2 will jump in front of this, right, and then I'll get 0. Let me pick another color. Let me pick blue, right? So if I take function number 1 and differentiate it with respect to x1, so what I'm essentially doing is DABA F1 by DABA x1, what will I get? I will get 0.5 into x1k. So this is just simple differentiation, right, that you've done in high school, right, plus 1, and then u1 has no x1 term, so it will just be 0, right? So DABA F1 by DABA x1 is 0.5 into x1k plus 1, right? So our first term in our matrix is going to be 0.5 x1k, right, plus 1. What is our second term? Our second term is going to be the same function but differentiated with respect to x2. So if I differentiate this same f1 with respect to x2, you can see that there are no x2 terms here, right? So if I differentiate by x2, I'll just get a 0. So my second term here that comes here is 0, right? And what is our third term here? We have to take f2 with respect to x1, right? So if I take our second function, which is this, with respect to x1, there's only one x1 here, so if I differentiate this whole thing with respect to x1, I'll just get a 1 for that term here. Everything else will be 0. So I'll just get 1 here, right? And then our fourth term should be the same second function with respect to x2. So if I take this second function, differentiate it with respect to x2, this term will be 0, this term will be 0, this 2 will jump in front, and I'll get 0.5 x2k. So our fourth term is 0.5 x2k, right? So this is going to be our linearized systems A matrix, right? And you can see that there's a x1k term and a x2k term here, right? All you have to do is pick one of these equilibrium points that you discovered, that you calculated. Let's say you want to pick this set, and all you have to do is substitute these values for x1k and x2k, right? So for example, if I pick this set, my A matrix is going to be, if I pick x1k to be plus 2, 2 into 0.5 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, I get 2, 0, 0, 1, and then x2k is 0, so I get 0 here. So our linearized systems A matrix is going to be 2, 0, 1, 0 at this equilibrium point. At this equilibrium point, I'll have to recalculate and substitute values into this equation and get it, right? So that's really the process of doing it. This is for the A matrix. You do the same for the B matrix, right? It's simple differentiation and substitution, right? Now that might seem like a lot of things, so I'm just going to quickly summarize this again, right? What is our goal? We have a bunch of nonlinear functions, right, like this, right, which we can summarize like this, right? It's a nonlinear function, and we want to convert it into a linear form like this, which essentially means we need to find these a and b values, right? And for the output, we'll have to find the c and d values, right? So the linearization that we're going to do is an approximation. For that approximation, we need to pick certain points around which we want to approximate, right? So the points around which we are planning to approximate will be the equilibrium points of your system, right? So to find so the first thing you'll have to do is to find those equilibrium points, right? Find the points around which you want to linearize. To do that, all we have to do is find the places where the change of our states become 0. That is x1 k plus 1 minus x1 k is equal to 0, and x2 k plus 1 minus x2 k is equal to 0, right? So it's simply solving these two equations, right, and finding the solutions or the roots of these two equations, right? And when we find them, you can see that you get a bunch of equilibrium points. In this case, you get 4 equilibrium points. The second step to convert this nonlinear system to a linear system is to find the derivatives of this of these functions, right? So how those derivatives finally connect to our linear system is through these Jacobian matrices. This A matrix is just going to be the first function differentiated with respect to x1 and x2, and then the second function differentiated with respect to x1 and x2, right? And then once you calculate this Jacobian matrix, you need to substitute those equilibrium values that you just calculated here, right? So depending on the equilibrium values that you pick, you will get different A matrices and essentially a bunch of different linear equations, right? So this nonlinear system actually has 4 linearized versions, right? It has 4 linearized versions. So in this case, those 4 will depend on these 4 equilibrium points. So what you would normally do in your control system is like, okay, if I'm close to this equilibrium point, I use the system that I've linearized using these points. If I'm close to these equilibrium points, I kind of use the system linearized around these points and so on, right? So I hope that's sort of clear. If you have any questions, you can ask me now because we're going to jump into the tutorial questions. Hopefully when you do the tutorial questions, it will be clearer. And if you're still kind of confused about this, you can watch this video again and ask me questions via email or in next week's class, right? But yeah, I think the intuitive understanding of using the Taylor series and why we find these equilibrium points, I hope that gives you a clear understanding of how all of this kind of fits into each other. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you guys 5 minutes to look into the tutorial questions, right, and start them, and also you can ask me any questions in the meantime. All right. Okay, so you guys have like 5 minutes to try sort of the first question. You can use MATLAB to do it. So what are the steps? The first step is calculate the equilibriums, right, which is straightforward, which is just finding the roots of these equations, right? It's just kind of like high school maths. You just try to find, you make x1k plus 1 minus x1k 0, right? And then you try to solve for x1k. And depending on your solutions, you'll have a bunch of more equilibrium points that you get for x2k, right? So first step is calculate the equilibrium points. Next step is to calculate the Jacobians. And once you calculate the Jacobians and you get your linearized systems, you can talk about the stability, talk about control in the same way we did in the previous classes, right? By looking at the eigenvalues of your A matrix. Okay. So I'll give you guys like 5 minutes, and then I'll do the first question with you guys, and then we can sort of discuss this further, right? So if there are any questions, you can ask me now. Pause the recording. Okay, hi everyone. So let's actually look at this first question, and we'll run through the answer, right? So the first step is we need to calculate the equilibrium points, right? So we've been given these inputs and two of these functions, right? So let's look at the solutions, right? So for problem number 1, these are the two functions that we have. If we want to find x1k plus 1 minus x1k, right? All we have to do is put a minus x1k here and a minus x1k here. So what we are getting then is x1k cubed minus x1k minus u1k equals 0, right? And if you want to find x2k plus 1 minus x2k equals 0, all you have to do is put a minus x2k here and a minus x2k here. So what we get is 2x1k. If we put a minus x2k here, we'll get plus 2x2k minus u2k equals 0. So what we need to do now is solve these two equations, this one and this one, right? We need to find the roots of these two equations, right? So I've written those two equations out here, right? So those are those two equations, right? So first we're going to start off by solving x1k, right? So MATLAB has this function called roots, right? So if I say help roots, how it works is you need to provide the coefficient of each of the terms in your polynomial, right? So for example, let's take a completely unrelated example, right? Let's say you wanted to solve the roots of x squared plus 4 equals, x squared minus 4 equals 0, right? So we all know that the roots are going to be plus minus 2, right? So how you would use a roots function in MATLAB is you'd say roots, and you would put the coefficients of each of these values. So what I mean by that is this can be thought of as x2 squared, right, plus 0 into x1, right, minus 4 equals 0, right? So you can think of this as a polynomial of x values, right? And what you would say for roots is you'd start with your linear term, right, and say minus 4, 0 and 1, right? So this will be a squared kind of term, right? So for example, you can see here, if I add you start off with the highest term, right? So you start off with, in this example, in this example, you'd be, the coefficient of the x squared term is 1, so you start off with 1. The coefficient of the x1 term is 0, so you put 0, and the coefficient of the, so here we have x to the power 0, right, is minus 4. So 1, 0, minus 4 will give you plus 2, minus 2 as the answer. So for example, if I say roots 1, 0, minus 4, you can see here the answer is plus 2 and minus 2, right? So what you put here are the coefficients of our polynomial term. So what is our first equation to solve? This, right? So if you look at this, what are the polynomial terms here, right? Let's look at it. Okay, let's look at this equation, right? So this is what we are looking at. You can see the cubic terms coefficient is 1. The squared terms coefficient is 0 because there is no squared term. And the linear terms coefficient is -1, right? This one. And then the constant term is going to be minus u1k. And in this case, u1 is 0. So that's going to be 0. So you can write any polynomial in terms of its coefficients, right? If this is not clear, let me do another example to kind of help you understand this. Right? Let's say we had x cubed plus 5x squared plus, or say, minus 3 equals 0. The coefficients of these terms are going to be, you can rewrite this as x cubed plus 5x squared plus 0 into x to the power 1 minus 3 into x to the power 0. So the coefficients are going to be 1, 5, 0, minus 3. And if you use the function roots, it will tell you what these what the roots of this equation are going to be, right? So I hope that's clear. So we've just done that, right? We've taken that equation, written out its coefficients, and gotten the roots of x1 k. Now for each of those roots of x1 k, there will be roots of x2 k, right? So you remember in this example, it kind of branches out depending on what the roots of x1 k we are looking at, right? So to deal with that issue, what we're going to do is we're going to just put it in a loop, right? Which is the length of the roots of x1, and then we're going to solve for x2k. Now you can use the roots function to solve for x2k as well, or you can just rearrange this equation and sort of make x2k the subject, right? Which is what I've done here, but you're free to use the roots function again. And for the x1 term, it will just sort of iterate through the x1 solutions that we got for the first solving the first equation, and then you just plug it in. So what we then get is a bunch of x1 and x2 terms, essentially these equilibrium points that we hand calculated before, right? Sorry, over here we hand calculated these equilibrium points. Here we are just doing the same in MATLAB using this roots function, and here is just rearranging the second equation and substituting each of these x1 values that we just calculated, because since this is a cubic equation, we'll actually get 3 different solutions for the roots of that cubic equation, right? So that will give us x1 and x2, all the equilibrium points essentially. Now what's our next step? The next step is linearize the system around each of those equilibrium points, which is essentially just finding the Jacobian of this set of equations, right? So if I try to find the Jacobians, right, let me erase all of this. So what is our A matrix going to be? Our A matrix is going to be delta F by delta X, which essentially means DABA F1 by DABA X1, DABA F2 by DABA X2. Oops, I did it again. F1. There's a very easy to follow pattern here. This is F2 by DABA X2, right? Alright, so what is DABA F1 by DABA X1? It's essentially this equation, right, differentiated with respect to x1. If I differentiate this equation with respect to x1, I'll get 3x1k squared, right? 3x1k squared. Okay. If I differentiate f1, again the first equation, with respect to x2, there are no x2k terms here, right? So all I'll get is a 0. And then for this term and this term, I look at the second equation, which is this. And if I differentiate it with respect to x1, there is no x1 here, no x1 here, just x1 here. So if I differentiate this, I'll just get 2. And then if I differentiate this second equation with respect to x2, I will get only this term will matter. Both of these will be 0, and then I'll just get a 3 here, right? So this is going to be my A matrix. Now I calculated a bunch of equilibrium points in the previous part. All I have to do now is this matrix substitute those equilibrium points. You can see that the x2 doesn't really factor in here. All that will really get affected is these x1 values that we calculated, right? So here I've written out the linearized version. I've done the same for B, right? B is essentially the same, but you're differentiating with respect to u1 and u2, not x1 and x2, right? And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to have another loop, and I'm going to at each loop I'm going to apply one of these equilibrium points. So let's actually look at these equilibrium points first, and then if I run this, you can see that hold on, let me comment out all of this stuff first. Let's just look at the equilibrium points and see how many equilibrium points we have, right? So up until here it's just a calculation of the equilibrium points. So if I run this, you can see that I get 3 equilibrium points for x1, and each of those equilibrium points will give me another set of equilibrium points. So overall I have 3 equilibrium points each, right? So 0 and 0.5, minus 1 and 1.5, and 1 and minus 0.5, right? So next what I'm going to do is I have my linearized version of the A matrix, which I hand calculated here. So I hand calculated that, and in a loop I put that hand calculation in here, and I'm going to substitute those x1k values that I calculated here, right? Luckily there is no x2k in our linearized version. In other questions you might have the other variable as well. So all I'm doing is, as the loop progresses, I am calculating all the possible linearized systems that I have, and I'm checking their eigenvalues to see if they are linear, whether they are stable or not, right? So I essentially have 3 linearized versions of my system, and I'm checking the stability of each of those 3 systems, right? And seeing which system makes the most sense for me to use, and which is the stable version of the linearized versions of my system, right? So if I run this now, you can see these are the eigenvalues that I get for. So you can see that there are 3 systems that this has spat out. System number 1 will look like this, right? And the eigenvalues for that is 3 and 0. So is this system stable? This system is not stable. Why? Because this is a discrete time system, and for a discrete time system to be stable, the eigenvalues have to be less than 1. It should be inside the unit circle. So if I take the first set of equilibrium points, the system I'm getting out of it is not really stable. If I look at my second set of equilibrium points, again they are not really stable. And if I look at why is this now? Let me run this again, sorry. And then the final one, again they are also 3, 3. So this is one of the problems that you face, right? What this tells us is if I linearize this system around these input points, right, and I get 3 sets of equilibrium points, but if I linearize it using those equilibrium points, all my linearized systems will be unstable, right? So there is no stable linearized system that I can find for this equation, right? Which means what I'll have to do is I'll have to do some sort of pole placement afterwards, or some sort of control to sort of stabilize the system. So what we did is we calculated the equilibrium points by solving the roots of those equations. Then we calculated the Jacobian matrices. That we did by hand, right? And then we put it into a loop and substituted those roots that we calculated. By the way, you might not need to do this by hand, this Jacobian calculation. I think MATLAB has a function called Jacobian, I think. I haven't really used it, but you can look into that as well. So that's up to you to, but if you look at, yeah, it has a function called Jacobian, so you can use that and experiment with that. But I've just used a hand calculation because all these three questions you can easily differentiate without much trouble, because they're all just x squares and sines, and like basic differentiation you should kind of know by now, right? So, but if it's difficult, you can always use the MATLAB Jacobian function, right? So I've given the answers here, including the Jacobians, right? You can see here I've given the Jacobians, right? And then what we did is we substituted the equilibrium points for each of those equilibrium points that we had, and we looked at their stability, and we saw that once we linearize this system around these different equilibrium points, we get unstable systems, right? But the good news is, now that we've linearized it, we can easily do pole placement and all sorts of control that we did before, that we learned before, right? So I'll leave question number 2 and 3 for you. I've given the answers as well on UTS Online. So we'll wrap up for today. Just to kind of summarize things again, there are 2 steps for linearization. First, we need to find the equilibrium points, which is essentially just re-changing this equation so that x1 k plus 1 and the previous step is equal to 0, and we do the same for this. Then the linearized version of these equations are simply a matter of finding these Jacobian matrices and then substituting those equilibrium points into those matrices, right? So it might seem complicated, but if you think of it as just 2 different steps, finding equilibriums, which is easy, which is just like normal solving of equations, and second, finding the Jacobians, which is our second step, which is just simple differentiation, and then using those values and substituting it into the Jacobians, it becomes a little less complicated. And the reason we do all of this, why we find these equilibrium points, why we differentiate, is because the underlying mechanism under this is the Taylor series approximation that we are doing, which I hope I've given you guys an intuitive understanding of, right? All right, so that's it for today's class. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll upload the videos today. If you guys have any questions, you can ask me. And yeah, that's it for today. I'll hang around for another 10 minutes if you guys have any questions. Also, if you guys have any questions regarding your projects, you can set a time with me on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I will try to clear things up as much as possible. I think a few of you had issues with the fetch manipulation of the fetch arm. If you all need help with that, let me know. There's a bunch of demos on the documentation I gave you guys. Look at how that code is written and try to adapt it to your situation, right? It might take a little bit of experimenting and a bit of trial and error, but that's all part of the process, right? So look at the sample demo codes and see if you can adapt it to your applications. All right, guys, thanks a lot. I believe I haven't uploaded last week's videos. I just realized I will do that today along with today's videos as well. The solutions for both tutorials are up, so if you need them. All right, thanks a lot. If you have any questions, I'll be here for the next 5 minutes.